Sai, come here.
Yeah? What is it? You ready to film? Everyone crying is making me. Look at these goosebumps. Kawaii. No.
Clack, clack.
Hi, Tokyo.
We just watched episode 10 with our lovely guest today, Sai.
Hello.
Welcome.
So if you guys don't know Sai is a very famous go-go boy in Japan.
Hi, my name is Sai. I've been go-going for about 2.5 years now here in Tokyo. I am Japanese, but I was raised in the US. I moved back to Japan about 7 years ago. Actually, today is August 3rd.
Yes.
Today is my Japan anniversary. 7-year anniversary.
We're gonna just do the same thing as we did for our first episode. We're gonna go by just cast by cast and talk about their overall kind of like, not only about the last episode, but the overall performance on the show. First one is Dai. Yes,
My sweet Dai. I like Dai. Dai is one of my favorites. I think he came in with a very strong personality. He was very likable. He was very good with his communications. He kind of already knew what he wanted when he showed up there. I feel like some of the other cast members, where they were like on the show to figure themselves out, Dai kind of already knew what he wanted and who he was. I liked his energetic personality. He was very like real.
He also had like arguments with like other cast during the show, right? Like he had a problem with Ikuo,
Taehon.
yeah, and Taehon as
And
well,
Usaku.
and Usaku. I think he's overall like very cute and so energetic all the time.
That's the interesting thing that I noticed when I was watching it, was that he has that energy with Shun. But with everyone else, when he has a problem, like he can show it quite nasty to Taehon, Usaku.
Not
and
nasty,
he
though.
was kind of nasty. Let's do the Usak example. If Shun was spending over 1,000 yen or something, do you think Dai would show up to that conversation in the same way? He wouldn't. It was like all lovey-dovey, Shun can do no wrong, and I will still love him forever sort of thing. But with the other characters...
I don't know if I got that vibe.
No.
Really?
Like, no.
I did for sure.
No, he actually clocked Shun's as well. Like, you think I'm gonna
several
come back,
times and
like
chase after you.
Yeah,
But he also didn't do it with an attitude sort of thing.
he
I thought
did.
he approached Usak kind of professionally about the
I-
1,000 yen.
You think so?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
he
thought
was like,
Yusaku
"Hey,
was.
I've been thinking about it and I had this concern.
I think
thought
it's
it was
you because Yusaku can do this.
Get away from my Yusaka. Don't cover me. I'll cover it. But I'm actually, Dai's like one of my favorite, if not my favorite on the show. So I'm not saying it in a way to sort of slam him.
Should we move on to the next person? Yeah.
Yes.
I think so. Okay. Next walking in the room was Taehon.
Stay home.
I liked how he showed up in the way of like that good big brother energy. A lot of things he talked about had very like, they were very deep. Even I think we talked about it at the start when he was saying like, you know, what pronouns do you want to use? I think every time he was talking,
yes.
his attitude was very progressive. Sometimes I wondered though, his almost progressive attitude, sometimes I was like, are you guarded? He kind of would like over intellectualize everything instead of showing up in
True emotion, right?
Yeah, and he did have true emotion at certain points, but there were times when I'm like, what you're saying is very deep and it's correct, but I feel like there's a guardedness there.
So Taeon is one of the cast members that I knew before the show. The energy that he gave on the show is not that much different than the energy he has in his real personal life. The kind of mature, intellectual kind of person that he is, a little bit reserved, but still kind and mature. Obviously, he didn't find his romance, but he had his own storyline of his coming out and his family, which was nice because that was something that the other cast members didn't really struggle with.
Yeah.
A lot of comments that I've seen in regards to the show and Taehon on social media and things are like, oh, there might be some racism because he's Korean and you
I
know
don't think
maybe the
that's the
cast
case.
members, and I really don't think that's the case. Even though it may not have felt like a huge impact of the show, I think there were probably lots of things off camera that we didn't see where he did build those genuine connections with the cast members, and then he also found his courage to come out to his family after the show.
I have a question. So Andrew questioned about was Taehon a go-go boy before in our last?
I remember you said that.
There was
Is he a
something
go-go
I don't.
boy?
You said that he is not
Not
a go-go boy.
boy.
He is not. He just has a fantastic body.
He just looks like a
He
go-go
just
boy,
looks like he
maybe.
could
He
be a
looks like a
go-go
go-go boy.
One other thing that I noticed about Taehon that I think kind of separated him from the rest of the cast, he is very international and like he speaks English, and Korean and Japanese. And because of that kind of like, I feel like his personality was a little bit more westernized than some of the Japanese cast members.
Yeah.
And you could tell by his argument with Dai that he had that his thinking was also a lot more liberal and a lot more
But
less conservative than Japanese. I think the thinking also didn't necessarily mesh with some of the cast.
But that's why I thought he was very guarded in a way, is because he kind of showed up in that way where I think it could be interpreted as like a bit of a high horse. So with that, would that come across to them as kind of like what are you talking, like as you said, like just not matching the vibe?
Okay, next. Next walk into the room was Ryota. I almost forgot about him.
Again.
The first episode you forgot about him.
I think I was quite wrong about Ryota from the start. Like the image initially, my like first
You
impression
shit on him so
was
much.
like very
Negative,
negative,
right?
very negative.
Very negative person.
As the show went on, there was an aspect that was shy, and he was trying, as you said, like there was a lot of growth. And so by the end of the show, I became quite a fan of Ryota. It was one of, you're cheering him on. And,
So you want to apologize to him, to the
Sorry,
camera?
Ryota. Sorry that I was such a dick to you in episode 1.
I love Ryota. It's still like the mysterious vibe, and also like he doesn't need to try very hard to get people's attention. Very kind of like low energy presenting, but like すごく魅力的あるの。
Is that your type? Like the
Very much
melancholy?
is, yeah.
I love this kind of struggling artist.
He loves it. What do you think about the like sending the line messages and stuff like that when Kazuto and other people are like on dates?
Even in the episode 10, when he asked Kazuto aside and kind of was asked him to leave together as like one final,
Fight.
push,
Yeah.
But at that point, he had fought so much, and Kazuto had clearly kind of expressed his feelings, saying, "No, I think we're better off as friends, and I don't view you that way." I felt like there was a point when Ryota should have said, "Okay, let's just stop the fight." Last conversation could have been just simply a expression of his feelings of, "Hey, I realize I still like you."
Yeah,
I
that's
could
true.
have left it at that.
That's true.
It only crossed the line when
When he
was
said,
like, "Will
"I
you
want you
come
to-"
leave-
yeah,
will you come
yeah,
leave with
yeah,
me?"
yeah.
As like that
It seemed
final
a bit
kind of,
forced.
and it put Kazuto in an awkward position.
Yeah.
Because to Kazuto, it's like, we've already had this conversation.
Yeah.
And I thought
How many hands do I have to reject you? Okay, next. Next is Shun.
I don't know. I had this roller coaster of opinions and feelings towards Shun. There were moments when Shun frustrated me so much. And there were times when I was just like, "Yay, go Shun." And I started to like him. And then I would do something and I would dislike him. And then I would like him. When he told Dai that he wanted to just be friends, and then got mad at Dai when Dai was kind of trying to move on, kind of accepted that with the whole Ikuo thing in the picnic. I got really frustrated with that. Like, you can't just tell someone, "Hey, we're friends, leave it," and then it was like, "Why aren't you chasing after me?" His growth of apologizing to Dai later on, when he was like, "I don't feel like I did something wrong, but I know I obviously hurt you, so I should apologize for the way I made you feel." That scene made me cry.
I cried too. I cried so much.
heartwarming.
We have to remember Shun is only 22 and 23 when he
I
was
did
on the
forget that
show.
he is
And
young.
it's the
yeah.
same thing as
Yes.
Dai, and it's okay to make mistakes,
Yes.
you know? And I feel like when I was 23, I was a Wagamama princess as well. You know, I demanded a lot of things like unreasonable from my love interest as well, like a lot of attention.
I agree with both of you. It was frustrating until I put the lens on of a 23-year-old and remembered actually, there are even some feelings that he displayed that I still have, even being 40.
You know, okay, can I say that? I watching Shun, I was like, I'm never seeing Andrew in a relationship, but that's how I imagine Andrew date a person.
Yeah.
So
Have
I
you dated
think
a person?
so. The thing is,
He's Shun.
I found myself being really frustrated with Shun for most of the show. And then when I sat back about it, I'm like, why is this so frustrating for me?
You saw yourself.
And then I was like, oh my God, am I seeing all these parts of myself that I don't like showing up? It's like this one time when I was like, where Shun was so, he was just whinging, being like, well, I don't want to give you anything until like, you have to prove that I'm the only one. And I was like, that is so selfish and one-sided. What are you showing to Dai? And then I thought about it, I'm like, yeah, but I've had that feeling.
One of the things that caught my attention was when Shun was browsing through Dai's cell phone and found those pictures, and he kind of had that instant shutdown moment, and he kind of pushed Dai away. And that kind of made me think about how maybe both of their worlds were very different. It sounds like Dai was more comfortable in the gay dating scene in the gay world, and Dai came from a very different background. Maybe he wasn't exposed to that and he wasn't used to that. I do wonder that because they were alone in their house with the 9 of them, the entirety of their relationship, not really influenced by the outside gay world or the outside world so much, that now that the show is over and they are out in the regular world now, you know, how is that going to affect their relationship?
Well, so I know we're gonna go a little bit off here, but that's actually something I wanted to talk about. We're looking at something like, how real is this? And it's one of the things that stood out to me about this show is that they're forced to be with each other. If this were real gay life, Shun would leave Dai on red, and he would just ghost him essentially. But because they were in each other's orbit and making even everyone in the house awkward,
And they
it
have to
forced them,
talk.
exactly. And I think of all the missed chances we have in our lives with being blocked and blocking. But that's gay life.
Okay.
That's real gay life. Next.
Gensei, right? Gensei.
Gensei.
So cute.
Kawaii.
Kawaii.
Ashigato no kanai. Like gonna reach the pedals, and we're like, oh. He's a bit like tennen. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
He misunderstood Ryota. Like, he thought the person who wrote him was Ryota, right?
Yes.
And so that kind of charged something in him, like, someone's interested in me. And then he started looking at Ryota in a different way, even though it was a misunderstanding. Then the MCs comment on that and said, sometimes love needs a misunderstanding like that to generate. And I thought that was a really interesting take on it. And I kind of wanted it to go that way. And unfortunately it didn't.
One of my favorite moments of the entire show was when Ryota made the coffee
Took the picture.
for Gensei and how happy it made him, and then how hurt Gensei was when he decided to make
Gensei da to omotta. Yeah. Gensei da to omotta. You're like,
so much. I really didn't expect Gensei to leave the show after his date with Ryota. And I think one of the narrators commented that it must have been hard for Gensei to keep going, and that final date probably kind of solidified that it doesn't matter how hard, he just keeps
You know, he said in the episode, like, he did what he wanted to do, which is confess about his feeling. That's the most important to him. It doesn't really matter.
I do think he could have also, you could have also stayed to the last episode to like, but I do understand it would be a really hard situation, and he did stay quite long. And
I thought it was a good exit. It gives like
what?
I thought it was a really good exit. Very like Miss Vanjie. Next, wait, who the fuck is next? Is it Kazuto?
Kazuto.
Okay, the Song Jia of this season.
The what?
If you guys know, he is the Francesca of this season. Do you guys know?
Oh, from Love is Blind?
I don't.
Too Hot to Handle.
I said in our first episode.
Yeah,
he has that face that Japanese gays love.
For any category.
For any category.
Kazuto kind of fits that niche. Whether you're, you know,
you like
little
the
Japanese
cutie,
boy, like
muscular,
fit, like an athletic. Like, he came in cooking for everyone. I did think that maybe he was. I thought when he was casted, it was like, oh well, somebody's gotta cook.
Somebody's
Gotta cook the
Let's just hire the help.
Wait, but he's the only one driving the truck. Every time they go out.
Taehon drove.
Usak brought his license, I think,
Yeah,
but he wasn't driving. I think you're right. Kazuto was driving.
Yeah, but like the truck needs a different license.
But
Three
people
members
went
on
on
the show
dates
that
without
drove.
Kazuto. There were some dates without Kazuto. Like, what about Dai and Shun?
Then the staff drove. They never show on the scene. When someone's driving,
I
it's
don't
know.
Well, anyways.
We need to rewatch that.
Interesting.
Kazuto was more than utilitarian. He juggled all these boys chasing after him nonstop and throwing their love at him. And he handled with such grace and kindness and articulation. I was super impressed.
Because it requires you to literally put yourself in the other person's shoes and to think about what they might be feeling and respond accordingly. And I think that is a really hard skill to get. And I think he did that really well. So
okay. Let me just say that. Oh, sorry.
I was just gonna say it's so hard being beautiful.
You know? Let me just say
all
that.
the boys after
on
you.
episode 5, I was like, how can I become Kazuto? Like, which doctor should I go? But on episode 10, I was like, fucking, be careful what you wish for.
Yeah,
like,
be careful what you're gonna get all the boys.
It's tough to be hot.
Yeah. One thing that I did notice as well, something that really like stood out to me or like, you know, made an impact on me was he was sitting with, I believe it was Ryota at the time, on the bench after doing a coffee date together. And he was talking about his first relationship. And he said he was from the countryside and he grew up not with a lot of examples of what a gay relationship is. And so he started dating his boyfriend and then he didn't actually know why he was dating the boyfriend. He was saying like, we can't have kids, we can't get married, what are we doing?
That's the point.
And I thought that was a really interesting commentary on Japan. A lot of relationships are demonstrated that way, that is the life. Of course, in Western culture too, we have that issue of getting married. We have that idea that, you know, you grow up, you buy a house, you get married, you have kids. So we have the same narrative too. In Japan, I think it is very structured that way. And when he said, like, I didn't even know how to show up in that relationship, why am I even dating? I was like, oh, it's food for thought for me, I thought.
I mean, they're all my favorite, but Kazuto is the most handsome one. Like, let's just say that.
I really thought Kazuto was handsome.
Yes.
Oh,
I really did.
okay.
Yeah, your coworker. What do you want to say
sucker,
about
you
it?
sucker. You want to say hi to your coworker? Hi.
Of all the people on the show, I'm obviously the closest with Usak because I've worked with Usak a lot. One of the things when I found out that Usak was on the show was his chicken shakes, which was a huge topic, a joke. And so Usak and I were featured in a music video together. I remember on the bus van ride to the music video, he pulls out his protein shaker, and I just thought it was a regular protein shake. And then he opened it and he started drinking. I was like, what's that smell?
Yeah.
And he was like, it's my protein shake. And I was like, what kind of protein is that? And he's like, oh, it's menenika, it's just chicken breast. And I was like, what? And he's like, yeah, it's chicken breast shake. Try it.
Gross.
And so I took a sip of it. It was so gross. It was so gross. It's like a bird chewing up chicken and just spitting in their little cheese mouth. Like, it was not for me. As his character or his personality outside of the show, because I've worked with him so much, he is fairly reserved. He is fairly quiet. When he expressed on the show that he has a hard time kind of expressing his feelings towards people. He doesn't necessarily, if he likes someone, he kind of makes an active effort to kind of hide that on purpose. He shared that with me before. When I heard that he was on the show, I went in thinking, oh, Usak's definitely not going to find anyone on the show.
So you're just like, you're like me, you're just there for the clout, you know?
I did not think he was there for the clout. What I thought was, a little bit what some of the cast members said, that he is so famous in the gay world, and that they are going to see him for the first time and put him on this pedestal of like this kami-sama. They're going to be too intimidated to even consider liking him. And it probably didn't help that when Usak entered the show, he entered via go-go performance.
Yeah. That's the difficult situation I feel Usak is in. He's not being able to show someone he likes. Meanwhile, there are thousands of people who like him, for sure. There were probably a lot of missed opportunities happening around, you know what I mean? Again, coming back to what we're saying about being forced to talk about it, he was forced to talk to, in a way, Kazuto about his feelings, and then Kazuto was totally blindsided.
You think the producers kind of pushed that?
I think there was growth in him too. But watching that, what I felt was like, it's so unfortunate because I don't think he sees how many people are interested in him. And I don't think he sees it. And then meanwhile, there are all these people who probably watch him
He's
and
like
want
that.
to.
He's a gay god. What do you like? You think he doesn't know he's hot?
Put it this way: if he actually really showed up that way, he would have been like, "Move over, boys. Hi, Kazuto."
But
it would be
but
very.
that's not his personality.
That's exactly what I'm saying. It's not his personality. So he's sitting there and kind of like, how do I approach Kazuto and express that I like him? Meanwhile, Kazuto's probably, I'm not sure if Kazuto did like him back, but let's say he did. he probably wouldn't have tried at
He
all.
didn't give Kazuto a chance to react.
Also,
you know?
that was also unfortunate that like I wanted to see actually if something could have happened between them. It was kind of a little bit of a like a cheap shot to be like, love ya, bye.
I know.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
Right?
Being in the same field as Usak, I relate to a lot of some of the struggles that Usak has. Being a go-go boy, you do have to put on this image, and you have to create this image, and you have to like その image を守る でしょ? Like in front of all these people all the time, cover yourself up and put on this image all the time. Is like, is this me? Is this me now? Who am I? And there's a lot of things that there were little hints of it, and just knowing Usak, like his drawing, I don't know if many people know
that he can draw.
That he can draw.
He's so talented.
Like
Very
if
talented.
am I allowed to say this? I don't know. If you scroll back to his really, really old Instagram on Usak, go really, you can see a lot of the art that he used to post. He's actually a really talented artist. You know, I'm a very big K-pop fan and K-pop dancer, and Usak was part of a K-pop dance group called Aizma, and it was one of the best K-pop dance groups in Japan, in my opinion. And he was a part of that, and I know he actually really enjoys K-pop. I asked him recently, "Do you still dance?" And he was like, "No, I don't dance K-pop anymore." And it makes me wonder: is this like to protect the image of the go-go and the sense, you know, the masculine sense of go-go? Do you wish you still did dance K-pop? And so there are so many things that you have to change, and this mask that we have to put on, that it is very easy to get lost in who you are, and then forget like, wait, what is me?
I just want to say that like when Sai says like K-pop, it means girly K-pop. Girls,
Not BTS.
That's why. Okay, next we have Alan Daisuke. Daisuke. On the show, I feel most of the cast are still very reserved and like introvert. I mean, with Dai and Alan and Ikuo probably are the only very just out there and being like, oh yay, all the time, right? So I think it's really he balanced it out very well. I love he's like twerking when he's
watering the plant.
It's interesting though, because you're right in that he shares sort of an outgoing personality like Dai and Ikuo, but there was something that was different about it to me. There was some sort of aspect where it was like on a lot, I guess, and I guess it got to a point where, you know, Kazuto just felt like the difference was too much. The energy was too much. But I really liked how then he was able to sort of be like, okay, like I'll, you know, tone it down and we'll try this from another angle. It was, you know, that yuzuriai, that sort of like, I don't know if we call it compromise, but sort of like, not that you should necessarily adapt to a partner, but he was recognizing, okay, I'm gonna show up a little differently for Kazuto, and it really worked out in the end.
Alan is the third person and the last of the three that I do know outside of the show. He is just as outgoing and he is the one on the dance floor when no one else is dancing. He is there twerking on the dance floor, and he's a bundle of energy and fun and party. Even though he grew up in Japan, that he still had the Brazilian culture that made him a little bit more westernized, and that was a different energy. That was a nice addition to the cast. A part of me wonders where after the show, if Alan's more energetic self starts to kind of grow, is it because Kazuto doesn't want that at all, or he just wasn't ready yet?
For it.
And if Kazuto's starting to like the gentle, quieter version of Alan, but that's not the real Alan, you know,
everything about it.
That's not everything. That's
about,
not the real, because that is real.
Yeah.
His quiet version is real. But if not all of Alan, you know, will it still be okay even after Kazuto and Alan get closer? We don't know what happens after the show, right? We do know that they
just
left
call
together.
Alan. Just call him.
Here we go.
Anyways, can we jump to the next person?
Ikuo? I liked him.
I love it.
Go ahead. I think it's very cute.
Seeing him instantly mesh with Dai, I was like half. I was like, oh, they're getting along so well that it seemed like friends in a way.
Oh, really?
But then they were also getting along so well that I was like, oh, maybe they could have, like, it was both. I was holding both. So I saw them vibe with each other, and I was like, oh, it could be something. Meanwhile, Shun was sort of being Shun, and I wanted a happy ending for Dai. And I thought maybe Ikuo could be that, you know.
Were you guys equally shocked where after that interaction and that picnic with Ikuo and Dai, and it seemed like so much connection, and then like either the next episode or later that day when they picked their thing, and he was like, I like Kazuto, and I was like, what?
I was not shocked because they probably informed him, oh, like Dai and Shun are already together. Then what's my next choice? Right? He even said in the video as well, but I'm not sure.
But during that time, Shun and Dai had just had their I want to be friends. Let's just be friends.
And then they're like, let's open the door for Ikuo right now. Yes.
And so, in my opinion, I thought Dai was available.
Yes.
I was shocked that Ikuo was like, oh, that person of interest that I was referencing, despite all this chemistry that I seem to have with Dai, is actually Kazuto. And then we saw in the later episode that he kind of was like,
it's actually Dai.
That
was a strange.
I wanted to see, or I enjoyed seeing someone treating Dai the way he should be.
We wanted him to be treated.
I was really nice to watch because.
But some people just love S&M. You know, you can't. They love the torture.
They love the pain.
Yeah.
I actually do think that part of that didn't work because there's an aspect of Dai that does, like, he wants to be the chaser or this and that. He's comfortable in that uncertainty.
He likes the struggle.
He likes the struggle, the fight. Attachment style, he sounds very anxious. Shun is very avoidant I'm not a psychologist, but you know, I look at that and I think, oh, that's how they're pulling each other back and forth.
I do like Ikuo's personality. I like the fact that he came on the show and was like, I'm here to look for romantic love, and I hope I find something. He came off right off the bat saying, I do have an interest in someone, I'm going to directly pursue it. And it was a lot more confident, and a lot more assertive, and a lot more direct than what we're used to, I feel like, with some Japanese dating culture, and which was a very clean, you know, it was a breath of fresh air to see a Japanese person who was like, yes, I know what I want, and I'm willing to express my feelings directly and say I'm into you. I liked how he handled Dai in the very end of saying, hey, I'm interested in you, and I think that, in my personal opinion, that I could be better for you than Shun. But even with the rejection from Dai, that he accepted it with grace and maturity. I felt like I don't think he reacted in a very negative manner.
I didn't like that he went back on Shun, like being like, oh, let me help you with the Dai situation, and then go back to Dai being like, I like you, you know. If I was Shun, I would be throwing heads, you know.
That was hard.
I'd be like hair pulling back and forth on a Western.
You know?
But I looked at it as trying to get them to talk, to see,
to make them break up.
Well, not necessarily make them break up, but sort of like get to a point where, like, because it was this resolution, and then after that he could then make a move or whatever. I don't know if it was that calculated necessarily in an evil way, but kind of like, guys, talk, figure it out. You know,
it wasn't
like,
malicious. I think the rest of the cast members understood that it wasn't malicious.
But he kind of meddled, and then I think Dai was kind of like, someone came into our relationship and like fucked with our vibes.
お前さ、なんでそんなことやるの?
That's my point. Like, he was
drama. That was drama. That's Japanese drama.
Yeah, it's equal to throwing hands.
They might as well. And I do wonder that if he was there from the get-go, and that there wasn't the Shun and Dai relationship started to begin with by the time Ikuo had gotten there, would Ikuo and Dai ended up as a couple?
Dai was always on Shun from the first episode.
Dai gets pulled into
the struggle,
the chaos. I think it's comforting chaos.
Okay, I know Shun is not your guy's type, but Shun is very attractive. Like, honestly, like
he is objectively attractive.
Yeah. So like maybe he's like Dai's like do type かもしれない. I mean, Shun got the most Instagram followers. That says a lot. And he's catch all the female viewers.
We all know that's where the money comes from.
We all said that the straight female viewers, that is the epitome of standard of beauty for straight females.
Not only the beauty though, also the same mentality.
Yes, I was going to say the same,
well.
that sort of
Like seeing my
I
boyfriend
I want that guy to pursue me. I want to feel loved. It's all that stuff.
like
themselves.
straight girlies will feel jealous if you see your guy scrolling on other
and you
girls'
see the
Instagram.
dick pic and
and
yes.
They will have a serious conversation. That's very Shun,
Yes.
you know.
So that's actually one of the things I felt very interesting about the show is we know that like obviously it's more skewed BL for me then, and I enjoyed it for what it was. Like we're looking at it being like, yeah, you have a dick pic in your like of course you do. Everyone does, and you're going to be sending it, of course, right? But as you said, like it's turning into a drama, and I'm sure a lot of the straight female viewers can watch it and relate to him being upset about it because in their world that would be an issue.
Yeah.
But it's like gay world, I'm watching it and I'm like, it's a dick pic. You can know each other for 24 hours.
In a straight world, Shun is normal. And Dai is asobi.
Yes, exactly.
It's
exactly. But it's the flip here. Where Dai's normal.
But normal in gay world.
We're looking at Shun and being like, grow up, Shun. Right?
Yes.
We talked about the character, right?
Yeah.
The overall show. I mean,
Go ahead.
The overall show, I feel like definitely, I love the cast as a whole. The diversity in not just the culture, but the personalities. I liked how it wasn't like Western dating shows. I only know Rumors of Singles Inferno and Love is Blind. I've never watched them, but
They're great shows.
the type of drama was very Japanese, right? It still showcased what Japanese gay dating and gay love kind of feels like. I feel like we've all we watched it and it was like, oh, we've definitely been there and felt that and experienced that living here in Japan. And it's nice because I've had a lot of my Western friends who live in the US message me and talk about the show and talking about why is it so reserved, why are they so quiet, why are this person why is this a big deal, and they're seeing all these things that they never realized existed in our side of the world of gay dating life, and I'm like, now you kind of understand some of the struggles that we're going through.
I love the show. I cried so many times for the show. I'm just waiting for the White Party remix of the song.
The song is great.
I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it more than I thought I would.
You didn't want to watch it,
I didn't
right?
want to watch it because, like, I think it's almost too close to home. I think you were saying things like, people were saying like, koi shitaku natte kita, right? Yeah, of course I watched this and I think, wouldn't it be nice to find a real love and stuff like that? But then I watch it, and as I was saying before, my reality is like you'd get into a Shun and Dai thing and someone would block each other before, you know, something happens without talking about it, without bringing it up and this and that. And so stuff like that where I was like, should I be watching this, or is this just gonna make me feel not hopeful? Because you know what I mean? Like I think
it was too real.
Too real. Do you know what I mean?
I like the fact that it was real.
Yeah, I like it.
But the representation was really good. At the right time, threw in social commentary. They were talking about not being able to adopt in Japan. And I felt like the MC and the shows were teaching the general population.
I like that too.
You know, like they were showing everyone, look at these gay guys and how cute they are. But here's some of the struggles. And hey, this is because we live in the society, hint, hint, it needs to change. I was thinking second season, they should do a new one.
Before that, who your top two
top
pick?
two.
You have to choose two.
Are we talking about our top two favorites, just like who we like on the show, or like who we want to?
Right.
Oh my god, that's a good
What do we
question.
mean? Like who we would pick
We
if
want
were
to
on the
date?
show?
No. Let's do just your favorite. Just watch.
Favorite on the show. To
on the
watch.
show. Yeah.
Mine is Kazuto and Dai.
Just die.
No,
Just
there's no
die.
just die.
Die.
He hates the show.
It's not that I don't like the other cast members. It's that Dai made me feel things, I guess.
You're Shun. That's why.
That's why.
Mine is Shun and Kazuto. The queen and the princess. You know? Without them, where's the drama? But I would say Gensei as well. I love Gensei.
So I feel like this was a good entry into gay representation on TV, warming the audience up to a sort of a nice, somewhat sterile understanding of gay life. So I think palpable. I feel like now we have an opportunity to like show a little bit more about ourselves. The second season, it should be called like the open relationship.
No, we don't need that.
Have everyone come in.
No, what do you want? Just like bunch of circuit boys.
Circuit boys. They come in clacking the band of the remix of the thing. Right?
You want a Jersey Shore of the
Shore,
boys.
that'd be so
Yeah.
But it was real. This is Japan. That was real for Japan.
I feel you have a misunderstanding. You think we are norm. We are not norm. We are only one section of the gay community here. What you see is also doesn't represent the normal Japanese gay experience. We're the gaijin version.
I don't necessarily agree with that. And I don't agree with that. I think that it's a lot more, they were like steered in a lot of different directions. Every time it's like, even if they talked about sex, they avoided the topic and they avoided actually like naming it. There was like all these aspects where it was like kind of brushed under the rug quickly and people had to infer. And so it's like stuff like
Japanese communication, the inference.
Yeah.
there is inference, but it's more this. I think I felt watching the story that it was like, no, we're going too far this way, let's push it back. It was guided.
You mean the producers were kind
It
of
was
censoring
guided.
some of the...
I'm not in all the Japanese community here. There's a lot of aspects that I don't have access to. So I understand what you're saying, that there could be this sort of side that, you know, is like the show. But I'm not saying that the show is necessarily depicting a wrong side. I'm saying that there's so much more variation.
You just want more nichome gays, basically.
Not even necessarily.
Yeah, it sounds like, yeah.
But I think that the reality is that an open relationship is quite common in gay life and in Japanese life.
But it's hidden. It's not like.
But that it's still. This is the thing. If we're gonna then do that representation, that's just all I'm saying. I feel it's like, don't show this much to the straight world because it might be too much for them. So let's make sure that it's staying in this path, and this path has a sense of truth to it, but not entirely.
I do agree in the sense that some of the content is probably censored to make it more palpable to the average Japanese person, right? They're not going to necessarily show the bathhouses and the nichome clubs and the, you know, events that happen, that side of the gay culture that Japanese gay culture does have, right? But I also agree that with Meng that, you know, when we go out to Nichome, we do see the same faces over and over and over and over, and that there is a much larger, unknown, hidden population of the Japanese gay community that is that quiet life. That is the life that they just want to find their partner and live together and live quietly and have their little, you know, that life. I do agree that in maybe season 2 that they could add a little bit more of the other
just
side,
drip feed it,
just
like
a
Alan,
couple,
like a
couple
little, like
drops
yeah.
The Nichome gay culture and that side of the more liberal, more outgoing kind of gay culture that a lot of the Westerners kind of do know. But I like the fact that it's maintaining this. It's kind of showcasing this quiet version of the Japanese community that we don't often get to see. I feel like we don't get to see it that often because we're in...
So you thought it was like you were getting a little open, door to it.
Yeah, and when I date a Japanese person, it kind of gives me an insight into how to date a Japanese person who was born and raised here and what their expectations are.
Don't go out watering plants like this at the moment. Just water normally, a little bit.
So I think the representation is pretty correct, I feel. Yes, they may say like, oh, I want to suck your dick on the app, but that's between you and them. That's not between a room of other guys. Japanese people are pretty reserved. Okay, let me tell you a story. So my friend, you went on those like retreats, right? Like なんか Go-Go Boy と一緒になんか go to skiing とか。
Yeah. Oh, the Shugaku Ryota みたいな。
If it happens in the West, orgy happens every night.
For sure.
They don't do it here. They like do it very discreet. Sometimes they do like touchy under the blanket, but they don't do it like, yeah, let's all play together, you know?
So if there's season 2, would you apply?
He doesn't need to apply. He's on the list.
You're gonna get called.
I feel like if I were to go on the show, I would be a mix between a Dai and a Taehon. I don't know if that would be received well or not, but I would definitely be open to being on the show.
Did you do it?
No.
Why? You wouldn't do it?
ちょっと I'm bad in front of camera.
Even though it's like, well, what is it, like full time?
Okay, here's the one thing. Like I'm really afraid of showing my femininity. So I feel like on the show, everyone like other than Gensei, I feel it's quite neutral, but it's like 全然お姉ちゃんなくないですか?
Yeah.
I feel like people, I don't know if they're suppressing themselves, doesn't want to appear to like みたいな感じだけど、in order to be likable on the show, I may act like not myself.
I agree with that of like being in front of the camera probably changes yourself. And then we talked about how what is produced by the producers and what is normal. And so before I 100% would agree to go on the show, I think I would probably talk to some of the season 1 castmates and be like, hey, how much of yourself could you actually show? How much was it produced? And what to expect? And if I felt like I could genuinely be myself on the show, then I would go on the show.
The only reason I would be on the show is to promote our channel.
The cloud. So I actually have a secret to say.
You're on the show.
No.
You're on the next season.
You're on season 2.
The open relationship. I did apply. When you
Why
said
you lied? Why you lied to me?
I
feel so betrayed.
I think I was a bit embarrassed at the time because I applied thinking like maybe I could get on. And then I thought about it. I was like, what? Like I shouldn't be embarrassed about applying and not getting on, you know. I think Gensei and Taehon did incredibly well going on as the foreigners. Their Japanese is amazing. I think having some of the conversations that were had in any relationship, right? Are difficult, let alone doing it in a foreign language. I watched Taehon and Gensei a lot being like, wow, like you guys are really communicating really well in Japanese and your feelings and this and that. And I think that would be a really struggle for me to do on TV.
So actually, I was approached by the producer 2 years ago about this show. And he was like, hey, I'm a casting agent and producer. I'm creating this show. It's similar to Terrace House, but it's for gay people. Would you be interested in joining? And I was offered like, you know, a possibility, a spot on the cast. And at that point in time, I said no. It sounds like a lot of fun. It sounds great. But I had the same worry, and I told him, the producer, that like I don't feel that my Japanese is up to par to be able to be on a Japanese dating show, to be able to communicate those kinds of feelings. And even though my Japanese has gotten exponentially better since then, and I can make Japanese relationships and communication, I definitely understand that the type and the level and the deepness of the conversation required for these things. Like Taehon and Gensei, you know, like I don't think I could replicate that in my conversations and articulate my feelings the way I would want them articulated in Japanese. I would hope that season 2 is longer. I thought that it was short.
Like
pretty long.
Maybe 5 more episodes of Shun and Dai struggle
just
together.
fighting. They're just
Totally.
I love the MCs where they were like, oh, don't worry, they'll fight again or whatever like that. Like, so don't like, hold on, it'll come back, you know.
Oh, I missed something.
What?
Can we just say I just realized I'm such a prophet?
Why?
Like because all my prediction came true. There were 2 couple came out of the show, and one is Dai and Shun. Usak gonna leave the show without any connections.
I also I called the Usak one. I was actually surprised that any couples formed, to be actually honest.
I thought it was going to turn into The Friend.
And also said Kazuto is gonna be the most famous one, popular one.
Did you predict that?
No, I said like I'm so surprised he didn't get the most letters. So it proving later in the show.
Maybe you should be a producer. Maybe you should produce a show.
Yeah, and
Netflix hit him up.
Yeah, the open relationship.
We will make
the open
we'll make
relationship.
a-